following is from the Agency for Instructional Technology, AIT.
Let's go imagining together to a place so old it's always new. We'll tell a tale, my friends, to you, and share a smile before we're through, and share a smile before we're through. Bum, 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 bum.
How many of you know what a boomerang is? You know, it's that curved piece of wood, and you throw it out, and it tumbles end over end in a big wide circle and comes right back to you. They're really a lot of fun to play with. Well, words are a lot like boomerangs. I mean, you send them out, and eventually they'll come right back to you. If you say something kind about somebody, eventually somebody will say something kind about you. But if you do something unkind or say something unkind, well, you can expect that unkindness to come right back to you. Well, today's story is about a good, kind boy named Jim who got upset one day at a grouchy, strange old person and said some things he shouldn't have said. This is the story of Longnose. Long ago in Germany, there lived a farmer and his wife. They were good, hard-working people. They had one son, Jim, who was a handsome boy of 12 and was very kind and obedient to his parents. Every day, Jim and his mother went to the market to sell good things from their gardens: herbs, cabbages, and early pears, apples, and plums. Well, one day, an old woman shuffled over to their vegetable stand. She was small and sharp and wrinkled. Her nose hooked down and almost touched her chin. She reached out with her dirty gray hand and began turning over the herbs which had been neatly laid out in a flat basket. One by one, she stuck them under her nose and sniffed them. Each one she threw back into the basket with a grunt.
Bad stuff, bad stuff. Much better 50 years ago.
Jim became upset. Now look here, old woman. First you mess up all the herbs so that no one else will want to buy them. Then you stick them under your ugly nose and say they're no good. Just please buy something or go away.
So, you don't like my nose? Be very careful that you don't have one just like it someday.
And with that, she began rolling over the cabbage heads.
Bad stuff, bad stuff. Better cabbages 50 years ago.
She wagged her head from side to side and glared at Jim and his mother.
Don't you have anything fresh?
Now listen here, old woman. Now don't wag your old head at us. It might fall off your skinny neck. Those cabbages came fresh from the garden this morning. Now either buy something or leave.
So, you don't like my neck, eh? Be very careful that you don't end up someday with no neck at all.
She looked at the cabbages again.
Now I'll take 6 of these sorry cabbages. But as you can see, I am a feeble old woman. You will have to carry them home for me.
They walked until they came to a broken-down little cottage, all covered with vines and weeds. The old woman took Jim to the kitchen, where she said,
I will give you something for your trouble, young man. I dare say you are hungry. All boys are hungry.
From a big black pot on the stove, she poured Jim a bowl of steaming soup. It smelled delicious.
You won't find soup this good anywhere else in the whole world.
She was right. The soup had a wonderful taste. It didn't take Jim long to finish the bowl. Suddenly, Jim's eyes felt strange. He couldn't focus them. His eyelids became heavy. He seemed to float as a long dream began to unfold. He was in the same kitchen, but everything was moving. Pots and pans and huge spoons and ladles. Cabbages of all sizes and colors, all swirled about his head. A blue cabbage banged him on the nose. Then a heavy ladle banged him on the head. Suddenly, everything in the kitchen attacked him, hitting him on the nose and striking him on the top of his head. A horrible nightmare. Jim awoke, shaking. He was still sitting at the old woman's table. He slowly raised his head. The old woman was nowhere about. He left the old woman's house and started back to his mother in the market. As Jim came to the market, he saw many strange people, all of whom laughed when they took a look at him. Jim was puzzled. He searched for his mother. Strange, everything in the market had changed. It was as if he'd never been there before. Finally, he thought he recognized a woman sleeping at a table. It was his mother, only she was older. He ran to her and touched her shoulder. "Mother?" The woman woke up with a start and looked up, and then she screamed, "Get away! Get away!" "But, Mother, don't you recognize me?" "Don't call me Mother! I never gave birth to any monster! I had a pretty little boy once, but no monster!" Jim was confused. He couldn't understand. He wasn't a monster. "But I'm Jim, Mother, your pretty little boy, Jim." "Your name might be the same, but you're no son of mine. My boy disappeared 7 years ago. He'd be a man by now. Please, go away." Dazed, Jim realized that something must be terribly wrong. Had he really been gone 7 years? Had his looks changed? He left the woman and ran to the market well. When he looked at his reflection, he gasped. His nose and his neck. He had no neck at all. The old woman had done this to him. She had made him a monster. He rushed from the market to find her, but when he got to the place where her house should have been, there was nothing there. Nothing but vines and weeds. Jim sat down beside the road and wept. His life was in ruins. Sometime later, an old man came along and sat down beside him.
"A good day to ye, me boy. I bet ye be the Duke's jester."
"Jester?"
"Aye, you make the Duke laugh with your melon nose and your turtleneck."
"No, my name's Jim."
"Well, you ought to be a jester. If I was you, I'd apply for the job."
Well, some strange remembrances began coming back to Jim. Something from his dream. The kitchen. The pots and pans and spoons and ladles. That was it. He had been the witch's cook. Now he remembered. For 7 years he had prepared food for the witch. He could do something. He could cook. Without saying goodbye to the old man, Jim jumped up and ran to the Duke's castle. He found his way to the kitchen door. It was a Dutch door, and it was half open. A scullery boy was leaning out the top. He immediately began to laugh.
"Are you the Duke's new jester?"
"No, sir, I've come to apply for a position in the kitchen."
"Oh, but the Duke already has a cook. You'd better do to get yourself some bells and a banjo. With that nose, you'd be a perfect clown."
"But I'm a good cook. I know I could please the Duke with my dishes."
"Well, you have to talk to the chief cook. Hey, Clico, come to the door. There's a sight here you've got to see. There's a nose with a boy on it."
Presently, a large man with a stern face came to the door. He looked at Jim.
Tut, 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 I dare say life has not been easy for you, Long Nose.
"No, sir, but I'm an excellent cook. Please give me a chance. I'll prove my worth in your kitchen." Clico looked earnestly at the poor boy.
This kitchen is not a happy place. We live in fear of the Duke. When he is displeased with the food, he has us beaten. You don't want to work here.
"Oh, yes, I do. I know I can please the Duke. I know secret recipes." Clico bade the boy enter.
You seem sincere, Long Nose. I'll give you a try. Do you know how to make marrow pudding?
"Yes, I've prepared it many times."
Good. That's what the Duke has ordered for dinner. I have started the pudding. Come, have a look.
Jim went with Clico to the big stove. He stood on a chair and leaned over the pot. "Are you using the spice laurel root?"
Laurel root in marrow pudding?
"Oh, yes. It greatly improves the flavor." Clico handed Jim the laurel root, and Jim sprinkled a bit on the pudding and stirred it in. "There, now, taste the pudding." He gave the spoon to Clico.
This is good. I would have never thought of it.
Clico was pleased.
You have the job, Long Nose.
So for many days, Jim, now called Long Nose, cooked all the Duke's meals. Each meal was a success, and eventually the Duke called for the cook who'd been preparing his food. Jim was nervous as he stood before the Duke.
So you're the cook who can work miracles. Well, I hope that this is true, because tonight I shall challenge all of your talents. Can you prepare a Serbian goose?
Yes, sir, I can. For the first time in his life, Jim lied. He had never heard of Serbian goose.
Good, but I warn you, I do not like to be disappointed. The prince is my dinner guest tonight. He is very particular. If it is not perfect, I shall have you whipped.
Poor Jim. Well, first, he'd need a goose. He'd go to the market to buy one, and on the way back, try to figure out what to do next. At the market, while he was looking over the geese, one goose stared at him with a peculiar expression, a sad, searching look. "Please," whispered the goose, "buy me. Take me away from here." "You spoke." "Yes, I am not a goose. I am Mary, the miller's daughter. A witch has turned me into a goose. 7 years ago, an old woman came to our mill. She bought a bag of flour and asked me to carry it to her house. Then she fed me some soup, and I fell asleep. When I awoke, I was her servant. I worked for her for 7 years. One night, I followed her into the forest to see what she did there. She caught me watching her, and she flew into a rage and turned me into a goose. But she forgot to clip my wings. I escaped and joined these other geese so that she could not tell me from the rest." "Then you worked for the same old witch? I was her cook. If only we knew where she gets her power," the goose thought. "All I know is that she always went into the forest on nights of the full moon. She goes to where the chestnut trees grow beside the lake. Tonight there'll be a full moon. Perhaps she'll be there. We must go there and see what she does." So Jim bought the goose. Then together they went into the forest. The chestnut trees grew beside a dark lake, overgrown with eel grass and rushes. Jim and the goose hid in the rushes and waited. Around midnight, they heard a sound, a twig snapping. She was near. Then into a clearing beneath the biggest chestnut tree stepped the witch. She moved slowly and feebly. She raised both arms to the moon and began chanting,
Oh, pale sister, my light is out. My powers wane. Give your special gift again. Bring the flower petal snow. Make the magic mushrooms grow. Make the magic mushrooms grow.
Jim watched as flower petals began to fall from the sky. They began to cover the ground like snow. When they stopped falling, mushrooms started popping out until the witch was encircled by a ring of them. The witch picked one. Jim knew he had to act fast, and before the witch could raise the mushroom to her mouth, he dashed from his hiding place. He hit the witch from behind. She fell forward, and the moment she touched the ground, there was a flash of lightning. It struck her, and she disappeared. Not one speck of her remained. The mushrooms were still there, so Jim picked one and ate it. And then he felt his neck cracking and stretching. He touched his face. His nose was shrinking. Before long, he had turned back into Jim the handsome man. And then he looked for the goose, but before his eyes was the miller's daughter, Mary, kind and beautiful. A few days later, they were married. Jim's parents wept with joy, and so did Mary's parents. There was a huge wedding feast. Even the Duke was invited. But he would not attend. He sat fuming at his empty dinner table, waiting for Longnose. But Longnose had disappeared with a goose. He was never seen again. Jim and Mary waited till the Duke was long dead and gone before they told the true story, which you have heard just now.